Welcome back. We just heard from Missouri lawmakers. Now let's break down their comments and what to expect in Jeff City with our roundtable of journalists. Welcome again, KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney and Brian Ellison, host contributor with KCUR. First off, Republicans, because of resignations and some political appointments, are now just shy of the votes they need to override a governor's veto or approve emergency clauses for legislation. I know it's a Republican majority in Jeff City, but will this make an impact this session?
I think it actually could, Cody. I think the reality is that the Republican divisions that we're seeing on display in the Missouri Senate especially create a situation where Democrats have an unexpected newfound power. They may actually be in a position to partner with either the moderate majority of the Republican caucus or the so-called conservative caucus, the 7 Republicans who want to sometimes go a different way to possibly stymie Republican priorities or advance some of their own priorities.
It's a different game of chess now, Michael Mahoney.
Cody, one of the reasons for this that it's important is that there are a number of elements that the legislature is trying to do very quickly, including some federal COVID funding, redistricting, that sort of thing that requires a 2/3 majority to get things moving, and with an emergency clause. When they don't have that, then we go back to the position where it's sort of like Kansas in a respect, where you've got moderates and conservatives and Democrats, and so you've got three different parties. And we should get into that because on opening day last week, there was a clear split between the conservatives and the moderates in the state Senate, and that's been brewing for some time. It's going to be a factor this time around in however the Missouri State Senate tries to get its job done. And this coalition between the Democrats and whichever side they choose is going to be interesting to watch.
It's certainly going to be a factor. And Mike, it was funny last week. You said you didn't expect much, that you believed that this was going to be a highly unproductive session. With this thrown in the mix, do you think that stands?
I do. They've got a big, ambitious agenda, but it's also an election year, and election year politics in general make legislative sessions in Kansas and Missouri relatively unproductive. And then there are lots of folks that are running for Congress or trying to run up to a different office. Senator Searpoy said he didn't think it would be a big deal. I think it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, Brian, what's catching your eye right now?
Right, I think Senator Searpoy, of course, is not part of that conservative caucus, right. So he's not experiencing that level of division. You know, I think the reality is that there's a number of critically important issues that have to be addressed right away. There's the supplemental budget that we talked about in the last segment. There's funding for education. There's, of course, congressional redistricting and state legislative redistricting as well. We have a whole bunch of politicians there in Jefferson City who don't know what districts they're going to be running in a few months in their primaries, and all of that has to be addressed just in the first couple months of the session. I think this is going to be a session like none we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, because these filing deadlines are going to take place in late winter and early spring, and it's problematic right now as to whether or not they're going to have these new lines in place. So, as you mentioned, about people are going to not know the neighborhood that they're running in.
Right. Yeah, we've seen states like Texas, for example, really ratchet down on abortions, passing restrictive laws, essentially bans. I mean, Senator Searpoy said he'd like to hear some more about that. What do you expect to happen?
Well, I think we will definitely see, in fact, we have seen bills already introduced that would mimic the Texas law here in Missouri. I think we also will see laws that try a variety of other approaches that we've seen in different states to further restrict abortion funding, as well as funding for Planned Parenthood to provide other health services that the state already does not pay for abortions in Missouri, but to further restrict Planned Parenthood's ability to offer its other services. We'll see similar debates around education, what can be taught in public schools. And I think we're going to see a variety of conflicts emerge. Again, as Mike said, mostly about election politics. Many of those bills won't come to passage, but they'll still have a real impact on the ability of the session to do its work.
All right, and that's not even talking about COVID, which we'll have to discuss another time. Michael Mahoney, Brian Ellison, thanks so much for your time.